We're here today to talk about English language learners and special education.
Thank you. Well, I'm very delighted to be here. I'd like to talk a little bit about the theoretical perspectives and the importance of literacy and the ability of teachers to learn how to assess children online as they're interacting and working with them. We call that instructional assessment.
Can you share with us some of your experiences and knowledge that you gained as a teacher and as a researcher on English language learners and special education?
What I'd like to talk to you about is two students that I've known in different ways in different times as a classroom teacher and as a researcher working with other teachers. These students really provide, in my mind anyway, a prototype of two issues that deal with the theoretical framework and the perspectives of literacy. I'd like to talk just a minute before I go into the description of those students about the importance of literacy and language learning and how other perspectives of learning, for example, other theoretical frameworks like the importance of phonics or the contrast between phonics and whole language, how those impact the assessment and instruction process for special needs learners. And the issue that I think is very important is if we think about students just learning a new language, they do not have phonemic awareness, most likely. They do not even hear the sounds that English language proficient speakers are able to produce and assume that everyone else understands naturally. So when we give them tests of a phonemic awareness, we will very likely see that they have auditory processing problems. Mm-hmm. And students who haven't been exposed to literacy have comparable difficulties in dealing with assessment as it's presented in most tests because they've not been exposed to the kinds of activities or the kinds of responses that are expected on the test. So I think that it's important for us to be aware in our assessment process of how our theoretical perspectives impact what we think children should be able to do. I'm not an advocate of whole language or of phonics. I think that both of them have a role in the instructional process. But I think that if we don't temper sometimes our enthusiasm for either of those approaches, that maybe we misassess and misinstruct students. So I want to talk a little bit about two students in that context. Something I want to be sure to make clear. Johnny and Eddie are not these guys' names, of course. And we're just using these names to help us anchor our understanding of two prototypes. One prototype where the student had very little, if any, exposure to literacy or expectations that he would become literate or any support for creating literacy. And the other one where he had to become literate had apparently limited exposure, or perhaps he was exposed to literacy, but the instruction wasn't at his level of understanding. So it's very important to develop that level of expectations and the support that occurs in it.